Hello and thank you for joining me. This is Stan Arnold with Fika Technologies, that's F-I-K-A Technologies. And today I'm going to show you how to migrate documents from one ECM to another. Specifically, we're going to be looking at Documentum and Alfresco. Now I'm going to be using a tool to help me with this migration. So let's get started. Here you can see just a simple login page for Simflofy. For those of you who are not familiar with the tool, Simflofy is a federated search virtual repository document migration powerhouse. It is designed to connect to different repositories, allow administrators to view content in segregate systems, and even merge that content or move it from one repository to another. So our use case today is actually to take some content from Documentum, move it into a separate Alfresco repository while trying to maintain metadata across those systems. So first let's take a look at the Documentum repository we're going to be using. As you can see, I've got a couple folders laid out here. Very simple format and path, and I've got about 8 files here that we're going to try to migrate. And of course I have my Alfresco repository as well. This one's running locally, and my goal is going to be to move that content, these 8 files, into a folder on this system. So let's get started by logging into Simflofy. And you can see here I have kind of a job status page, but before we get into the job itself, what we're going to do is create a discovery instance. Now, discovery will allow me to take a peek at a repository and figure out what kind of types are available. This is important when we go to actually map some of the metadata across, and you'll see why. So let's create a new discovery instance, and we'll just call this Documentum Discovery. And for the type, we'll choose DFC, which is Documentum File Connector. Now we just need to give a few bits of information here just to allow us to connect. We'll give it a Mongo collection name. This simply tells Simflofy, store all the information that you capture in this Mongo table. Okay, the document base will be just the name of that folder that we're after. We will use a default port, and the doc broker in this case refers to the host that we're connecting to. Okay, so we have all of our configuration. I'm going to save this, and then we're just going to run it. You can see there's a little button down here. It says run. We'll hit run. And essentially, Simflofy is going to make a call out to Documentum and say, hey, what types are available? So here you can see 3 types that were returned to us. And the main type we're after in this case is going to be DM document, which is sort of their default content type. By clicking on that type, you can see all of the metadata available for a document. Okay, so now we have a pretty good idea of what metadata we can capture. Now, let's go ahead and create a repository connection, which is going to be very similar to what we've just done. And again, we're going to choose the Documentum DFC repository connector. We'll hit submit, and then we're going to basically enter the same configuration here. Now, the difference between the repository connector and the discovery instance is the repository connector is what we will leverage in our job to actually connect to Documentum and pull content out. So again, we're going to see a lot of the same metadata entered in here. And then we'll just hit save. Great. We can even test that real quick to make sure our connection works. And once that's done, the next step would be to set up an output connector. And once we're done with that, we'll set up a job and we'll bring those two together and hopefully move some digital content with great ease. Let's see what happens. So I've actually already set up an output connector for Alfresco, but let's take a look at it so we know what we're dealing with. The output connection to Alfresco is using the CMIS API. And so all I've done is set up some configuration here to point to my local instance of Alfresco. I've given the configuration an output folder path of Simflofy, and then I've added some credentials so I can connect. There is some optional configuration as well if I want to adjust the thread count, and that's something that you can get into if you have a scaled out system and you're really kind of honing in performance. We're not too hung up on performance for the sake of this tutorial. We just want to show you how easy this is to configure. So for now, we're going to leave that alone and use the default values. We'll hit save. So what do I have now? I have a repository connection and I have an output connection. The only thing I'm missing at this point is a job, and a job will bring those two connections together. So let's go ahead and go to list jobs, and then at the bottom we will hit add a new job. So let's give it a name. That looks good. Documentum to Alfresco. We're going to use the job type of simple migration. For the repository connection, we will choose our Documentum repository connector, and for the output connection, we will choose Alfresco local. Now, you'll see we've got quite a few tabs up top that give us some different configuration options. I'll run through a couple of them briefly, but for the most part, we're going to keep this pretty simple. So the first thing we're going to do is change the advanced options to include a different time date stamp. So this time date stamp will always be added to your query when you're doing a CMIS migration. So it's a good idea to go ahead and make adjustments to it based on your requirements. I want to make sure I get every document in Documentum no matter what the date is. So we're going to go back to 2001 and we will go all the way up to 2020. Next we'll go take a look at mappings. Now, I told you that discovery would come into play again, and this is where it will. You can see the discovery selector for repository and the output in this on this page. So what we're going to do here is actually select the fields we want to map and give them a source and a target. So first, to make things easier, let's go to our Documentum discovery connector. We'll select a type, and you'll see in the drop-down that we have our 3 types that we discovered. And then let's go to our output discovery connector. We'll go to our Alfresco local CMIS, and we'll select the type. And here you can see all the types available in Alfresco. We'll go with the CMIS document. And then the cool thing is, from here, we can actually select properties from one repository and map those to properties in the target. You can even write in your own fields if you wanted to, or if you want to make some changes, say you want to take the lowercase value of this property, things of that nature, then you can actually use a calculated field to handle that quick manipulation. So, the name will be mapped automatically, so we're going to skip that, and I'm just going to give it a property that I know exists in Documentum, dmdocument.log entry, and this is actually the user comment field in Documentum, and all I'm going to do is add a field mapping to CMIS description. See if I can find it. There it is. Okay, so I'll just hit the plus, and you'll see the type mapping will be added automatically, and then I will hit save, just to make sure I have all of the changes I've made so far saved. And then I'm going to hit edit, and I'm going to make a couple of other observations with you very quickly. So next, tasks. We're not going to add any tasks, but if we want to do something like make sure all of our permissions are inherited, or if we want to manipulate the names of files, there are several out-of-the-box tasks available. One, for example, an FTP task. Well, maybe we're migrating from a system that has content and metadata in a database, But maybe the binary content itself actually lives on a file system somewhere else or an FTP server somewhere else. Well, we can use this task to pull that content from that FTP server, attach it to the documents being migrated, and push it into the destination system. So a lot of very useful tasks come out of the box, but the best part is that this is very extendable and it's very easy to customize. So again, we're going to leave that alone for now. I do want to make one change, and that is the path, because I only want to copy content from the source directory in Documentum. So I'm going to add that path to my configuration. So Alfresco files, and notice I'm just hitting the plus to add those on there. Okay, so now I have this full path, and then I have to hit add so that it will actually only pull documents from that path. I could add additional paths if I wanted to, but those are the only ones I'm after right now. So we'll hit save, and we are all set. So let's take a try and see what we can do. We'll go to Documentum jobs, and what I just did was I put a filter on my view and just restricted my current view to jobs that have the word Documentum in them. Also a very handy tool here. So you'll see the status is new. This job has not been run before. And all I've got to do at this point is hit start. And we'll let the job run. Now this page will refresh. You can set the refresh interval up here. Or you can manually refresh the page with this button right here. So you can see so far we've read 7. We've written 7. Okay, now the job has completed. Once the job is completed, we do have some auditing data that's available to us. So really quickly, let's just take a look at a couple of those things. If you click on any of these numbers, you can get a feel for what was read or written. And it'll give you a list, it'll give you a document ID. If it's populated, it'll give you a document name and things of that nature. From here, we can look at read. We could look if there were any errors, we would see a nice report of those errors. We can also look at some statistics. So this kind of helps us gauge, how quickly documents are being read versus how quickly they're writing. Sometimes this can kind of help determine whether the bottleneck is your source system or your destination. And so when you're really kind of pushing your system to maximum performance and you're trying to get 200 documents over a second, this kind of gives you a jumping off point to make changes to your system to make that happen. Okay, so let's go over to Alfresco. I'm just going to refresh this page, and we should see a new folder created. Okay, there it is. So we'll go into Simflofy, go into My Repo, Alfresco Files, and Source. And here you can see all of our files have been migrated successfully. And we did also map the description field. You can even see the description was filled in wherever that field was available. So we'll do a quick preview just to double check and make sure our asset made it all the way, and there it is. So there you have it. We've migrated some documents, we've maintained some metadata, and we've done it very quickly. I don't know if we made it to the 5-minute mark. So that's it for now. If you're interested in this sort of thing, please tune in later or subscribe to our channel on YouTube where we'll do other videos. We've got a couple coming up that are very interesting where we're actually trying to max out the performance when doing some migration and pushing that 200 document per second limit. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm Stan. This is Stan from fikatechnologies.com. That's F-I-K-A. Thanks a lot.